everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Anderson. I am a freelance artist and teacher hoping to inspire creativity. If you would like more videos like these, please take a second to like and subscribe down below. It really helps in the algorithm of YouTube to help get my videos seen to more people. If you want to receive notifications of when I go live, please make sure to hit the bell and choose all notifications. If you have any questions during or after the class, make sure to pop a comment down below and I will answer it as soon as I can. I'll be leaving timestamps down below so you can skip ahead to the start of class, but I will be sharing announcements as well as supplies, so make sure to stick around for that. If interested in learning more about my classes, please follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and feel free to check me out on Patreon, where I teach exclusive classes to those who support me. In Patreon, I also give traceables for all of my live classes, including this one. Lastly, if you would like to share your work after class with me and others who painted along with us, please head over to Facebook, as I have an artist community where you can share your finished painting with us. I'll leave links for all of that in the description box below. Thanks for joining me, and let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to another live class. Today we are doing this very cute and fun daisy with a ladybug on it. We have done a couple big flower type of classes before, but none with a ladybug. And I think the only other ladybug that I've done is one was a watercolor ladybug that I was just doing for fun, and then I did a watercolor, or I did an acrylic class of 2 love bug ladybugs in my Patreon, but I haven't done one for a live. So I figured we would have fun with this and we'd put a little ladybug on our daisy. So yeah, welcome in. Hello, if this is your first time, let me know where you're painting from, who you're painting with, all that jazz. Today we have some fun things. We are going to do bokeh for the background. If you've never done bokeh, it's just a way of kind of stylizing the background. It's really fun, it's really easy, especially if you have these little sponge daubers. If you don't have sponge daubers, that is totally fine. I'll show you an alternate way of doing it, or you can sponge the background, or you can do any sort of texture to the background to kind of give that kind of blurry effect and just to put it in the background. Honestly, the background in this, don't be intimidated by it because it's just color. Just get color in the background and it will fade into the background. If it's just color, it doesn't have any detail, it's just color in the background, it'll make that ladybug and that daisy really stand out from the background. So don't be intimidated by the background if you are. But yeah, let's go ahead and go over supplies. I'll go over a few announcements with what's happening in Patreon right now, and then we will get going on our class, okay? The first thing I'm going to mention is my traceable. I have traceables for all of my live classes, with the exception of a few that just doesn't make sense to have it. I have these in my Patreon. They're available to every tiered patron. So if you already support me, or if you want to support me as an artist and teacher, you will also get free traceables for all my classes, as well as there's others tiers for exclusive classes as well. So if you're interested in that, feel free to go in the comment section, or by the end of the class I'll have it linked up above. It's everywhere. But yeah, you can go grab that, snag that. And I mainly have these traceables for people who don't necessarily, maybe they don't want to draw it, or they feel like they can't, or they don't want to spend the time to do it, because it does spend, you do have to spend a good amount of time trying to get all the proportions correct. And if you don't want to do that, if you want to focus on the painting, which is what I like to do in these classes, is focus on the painting process, then you can go in there, you can grab this, or you can just draw it on yourself. I've already kind of drawn mine, and it might not look exactly like the original, but we're here just to enjoy the process. So if you are not using a traceable, go ahead and put that on now. Go ahead and draw it in. You can draw it in with a pencil, you can draw it in with some maybe light colored paint, maybe like a light yellow with some white. We often do that in our classes. And if you want, I can go over kind of just the basics right now. Essentially, you're going to figure out where the center of your flower is. I have an 11 by 14 stretched canvas, so the size of my circle is about the size of my hand. So if you want, you can just follow the curves of your hand, and that will kind of give you a base thing. You can also use a plate or any other thing that might be round and kind of that size, and that'll give you a good base to go off of. The next thing you're going to do is on my canvas, my flower petals are about the size of my hand, kind of spread out. So if you're trying to figure out how long to get your petals, try to use something that's, you know, like you try to get something that you can kind of go based off of, and you can make little marks to see how far it at. And it doesn't have to be perfect, you know, some of these are different sizes and different lengths, different widths and all that. So nature is not perfect. It's perfectly imperfect. So don't worry if they're not all the same size, or they're like some are spaced out further. That's kind of how flowers are, okay? And then for the ladybug, essentially there's two parts. There's the red part, and then there's like the black part, which is in three little, I like to think of it of like a squished snowman. So if you turn it this way, you have a little baby like head, and then a little bigger piece, and then a bigger piece. So they're kind of, it's like a squished snowman. So that's kind of how I think about it. And as long as you get somewhat proportions correct, it's gonna look like a ladybug, okay? It might not be perfectly realistic or anything like that, but if you just get the basics of it, it's gonna look great, okay? Again, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to do it by yourself, I have a traceable just for you in my Patreon. Feel free to go grab that. It's $5 for the whole month, and you'll get access to not only this month's traceables for the 4 live classes that I do, but you'll also get traceables for literally the rest of the classes that I've ever taught live. So you'll get access to, I don't know how many live classes I've done, a lot of live classes. So yeah. Okay, so traceable, that's kind of how to draw it. I have 11 by 14 canvas. If you want to use a different size canvas, that is totally fine. In my Patreon, I have a traceable for 11 by 14 as well as a 9 by 12. If you have a different size canvas and you would like a different size traceable, just comment on that post and let me know, and I'll go and I will whip it up. It's really easy to change the size, and I'll just upload it to that same post. Obviously I can't do that right now, and you'll have to rewatch it, but just comment and I'll get to that, okay? So that is that. In terms of colors, honestly you can choose whatever colors you want. I will be using some black and white. I have a brown on hand, I have a yellow and a green. You don't need to use specific colors that I do. I like to have this bright green on hand because I can change it to whatever color I want. If you start with a darker color, it's harder to brighten that up, versus it's a lot easier to darken a color than it is to brighten it. So I have this super bright green. It's like almost fluorescent. It's called pale green from Hippie Crafter. And don't be confused by the bottles. These are not craft acrylics. They are full body professional acrylics. They just come from Hippie Crafter, which comes in the nice little bottles rather than the tubes. But they are full body acrylics. So I have this green that I adore this green because I can just change it into whatever color I want, whatever green color I want, versus other ones it's kind of harder to change it. And then I also have a red. Now I might need to get my other red out because I don't know how much left I have in this one. But yeah, that's the gist of it. If you want to have a blue on hand to kind of change some of the green colors, you can, but I don't think that that's necessary. So we have that. I have a palette knife to help me mix colors ahead of time. If you are a beginner and you're not used to mixing on the canvas, or you just have a hard time blending, make sure that you get yourself a flat palette with a palette knife and you can pre-mix your colors. This is really important for blending specifically, especially if you're a beginner and you're not used to how the colors work and how they blend together. Having a gradient of colors to work with and to pull from while you're putting it on the canvas is really helpful, rather than just trying to go in with like the base colors. So that is what I will be using today. I also have these for the background. Now there's a ton of different ways that you could do the background. Today I chose to do bokeh, but you do not have to do bokeh. I'm going to be showing how to do bokeh with these and without. And then if you want to do something else, like just like brush strokes and kind of just make it all textured, you could do that. If you want to just make it a plain color, if you're like, that scares me, I don't want to do any of that, just make it a plain color. Make it plain green. Try to get like the mid-tone of that green. Paint it green. It's gonna look great with just a green, and it'll probably save you a lot of time trying to figure out all that blending and stuff like that. Just paint it one color. That's totally fine. But I will be showing you how to do bokeh if you're interested, okay? And then lastly, obviously I have paper towel, water. Here are the brushes. These are just my standard brushes that I have on hand for all my classes. I have a large filbert class, or a large filbert brush, a medium to small filbert, and then 3 different rounds. I have a medium round, a small round, and then a liner brush. Those are like my standards for all my classes that I like to keep on hand. Occasionally I'll use a flat brush or fan brushes and things like that, but those are for more textured. We may or may not use some textures for this. We'll see. We'll see. I might try to, if we have time at the end, depending on how long everything takes, I might try to be a little bit more detailed with the middle of this. So we'll see, okay? Let's see. I believe that is it. If you have any questions during the class, please make sure to just comment down below. You can @ me so that it highlights my name and it'll bring my attention to the chat box. But yeah, feel free to comment, say hi, and we'll get going. People are saying hi, hello. All right, let's go ahead, and I have a, hopefully you guys have already put this on. If not, this is the time. Go ahead and draw that on. I have a couple announcements. I have one. I want to share what we did last week. Last week was a lot of fun. It was super relaxing. But this is what we painted last week. Super duper fun. I am a sucker for this like teal color. So the two of the paintings that I'm going to show you literally have this exact same color. That was not planned, but it is my favorite color, so I'm not complaining. We did this one, and not only was the class super relaxing, but the subject is super relaxing. So this one came out really nice. If you like oceans, or you have friends who like oceans, paint them this one. Give it as a gift. I'm sure they will love it. Okay, so go and paint that one. That one is free on my YouTube. Okay, so that one you don't have to paint anything or whatever. Obviously, if you want the traceable, there's a traceable for that one too. And then also in Patreon, so I pretty much have two tutorial tiers. One is $10, one is $20. This one is the $10 tier, and we do a exclusive painting tutorial a month, and this is what we did this month. So this is available as of last Friday, so go paint it. I also shared some tips on how to recreate this from maybe you have a cat or you have a friend's cat or something like that. Maybe you want to give it as a gift, do a pet portrait. I have a couple tips in there of how to kind of just adapt it to what you're doing, and you can change the colors, you can change, it's mostly, we worked on lighting and trying to figure out like where everything is, but this one, I love how this one came out, super pretty. Also, it's my favorite color, so obviously. But yeah, that one's available to the magenta $10 tier. And then lastly, as of yesterday, we finished our Ireland cliffs. If you've been following along in the lives or on my Facebook page, which if you're not on my Facebook page, please go over there and follow me. It's where I post like 90% of all of my content. Go over there, follow me. That's where you'll get like sneak peeks of things and all that sort of jazz. But yesterday we finished this, We finished our island cliffs, and look at that rainbow. I love it. It came out so nice. I shared tips on how to get a subtle rainbow like this and not to make it look obnoxiously bright. We just practiced with one strokes and how to get that sort of rainbow. I used to be a face painter pre-COVID, and I mean I'm still a face painter, but I'm like not currently doing face painting. And this just like, this speaks to my soul because we would do one stroke rainbows on all the faces, all the things. So when I was doing that, I was just like, oh, I want to face paint now. But yeah, that one was super fun. And I think it came out really, really well. So, all right. Yeah, so that was in our $20 level. And that one we go week by week. And it's about an hour and 15 minutes every week as we just kind of work through it. We go a little bit more in detail with those classes. But yeah, that is what's going on Patreon. I hope you'll join us next week. We're doing our like Bob Ross-esque style of easy landscape. That's kind of the theme of those. It's just an easy landscape that we can do for beginners, kind of in that style. So that's what we're doing next week. So stay tuned for that. But this week, let's focus on this week. I hope you're ready to paint. Let's go ahead and get out our paint. I'm gonna get out. Are you guys ready? Looks like a photo. Oh yeah. Yes, yeah. It does look like a photo. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna get out my green, my brown, my black, green, brown, black, and yellow. Whoa, that was a lot of brown. I don't need that much brown. What's really nice about the Hippie Crafter bottles is when I accidentally squeeze out too much, like I'm not going to use that much brown. With the tubes, you can't really put it back, but with these, just scoop it up and put it back. Hippie Crafter, by the way, they're a small business and they are wonderful to work with, by the way. They've given me so much paint, and they've also given away paint for me to, like, given me paint to give away. And yeah. So, let's see. Green, brown, black. I'm going to do some yellow because there's quite a bit of like a yellow color in here. And then some white, just in case we need to brighten that up. And we'll be using white later anyway, so I know I'm not gonna waste it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is try to create like the medium color that I see. So not the darkest, not the lightest, like the medium color. And we're gonna get, for the most part, just a base coat of green on here, and then we can come back with some of the other colors, okay? So I'm gonna grab some of this green. I already have a little bit of brown on there, and I'm gonna grab this yellow. If you have a darker green that you're working with, you'll probably need more yellow and maybe a little bit of white. I'm actually going to add a little bit of white and a tiny bit of black. When you add black and white together, it kind of grays it out and makes it a little bit, it just takes the saturation tone a little bit down and makes it a little bit more realistic, in my opinion. Because rarely is nature actually like that green. A lot of it's got more like yellow tones and brown tones in it. Alright, so I have this nice kind of medium tone here. Now that I've been able to create that, I kind of know what colors go in it. Now I'm just going to make a little bit more of it because I want to be able to cover, I want to be able to coat kind of this whole bit. The other really nice thing about doing a palette knife for mixing instead of like mixing it in a brush is you don't waste paint in your brush, you don't dirty up your water before you've even started painting, and if you end up using the same brush that you mix with, a lot of times you can get streaks of like the original paint in there because it either wasn't mixed well. I don't know how many times I've done that, and it's just nice knowing that I don't have to deal with that. It's just all taken care, it's all mixed. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is get my brush wet, and I'm just going to do a base coat of this. I'm not going to do the white behind here, I'm just going to do green. So I'm going to start a top because I tend to forget to do the top. And I'm just going to do my best to paint around my petals. This first coat is really just getting that green on the canvas. So just do your best. And we can always come back around with white after we're done with the background, which we probably will, to kind of clean up any edges that need cleaning up in regards to our petals. And I'm using my big brush, but if you're not comfortable getting in those tiny little areas with your small brush, that's okay, or with your big brush, that's okay. You can use a smaller brush. That's one of the reasons why I like the filbert brush, is because I can turn it on its side and get into small areas. If you find that your paint is not kind of mixing, it's not going on the canvas very well, try adding just like a tiny bit of water, and that will help. That will help it be a little bit more lucrative. More liquid, not lucrative. Help you make more money. Alright, and what I'm gonna do with a smaller brush is with that same green, I'm gonna come in here and make sure I get all those in-betweens. So we don't have weird holes later where we're like, ah, we forgot to do the background here. I'm going to rinse off my brush. Alright, so now that we have a base for this, let me get the bottom here because I always forget the bottom. Okay, not always, but it happens a lot. I got the side, got the top, okay. Alright, so once we get this, now here's where you get to choose your own path. You can choose to do a blurry one, just like the background in the picture. I would say if you're gonna do that route, try to make sure that everything is kind of like going in the same direction so that you can kind of blend it that way. That kind of looks like that's already the case in the other photo, and we're gonna go ahead and do some bokeh. So if you're ready for bokeh with me, I'm gonna go ahead and okay, so I'm gonna make a couple different colors now. So I have my base, which we're still gonna use, and then I'm going to make, oh no, my thing just like landed in my white. Handle. I'm going to use that later. Alright. I'm going to make a slightly darker green. So I'm going to take this green. I'm going to add a little bit of brown, more green, and a little bit of black to it. Make a little bit of a darker version. Maybe a little bit more green, not so yellow. Okay, I like that color. Again, it's all the same colors, just different amounts of it. So this one had, I just took the green that we were using before, added my green, like my normal green, my brown, and my black to it. And then we're also going to kind of make like a brown, just to add a different color to the background. You don't have to do this. Just adds variety to the background. Alright, so now that we have this, I'm going to go ahead and put on pretty much another layer, but with a little bit more color. And I'm going to be going in and out of these different colors and just kind of blending them together. So I have a little bit more of my dark. I have some of my brown here. I have a little bit more water as I go around because our background is already going to be that green color. So it's not like I'm trying to cover it up. I'm using that to my advantage. I'm going to add some plain brown here. And then I'm going to go up, maybe add the dark brown up here. Get this light green in here. And we're just going to keep adding these different colors. I'm going to add a little bit of dark green in here. Maybe a tiny bit of white up here. And you're just pretty much adding another layer of color, but just being a little bit more intentional with what color this time around. I'm just adding a little bit of variance to it. Right, now if you like that sort of thing, if you like this sort of look, you can keep it like this. Maybe do another coat of these colors. Or you can do some bokeh with me. Totally up to you. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna rinse out my brush while I work this. And I think I actually want to put a little bit of a yellow spot in here. So give me a second. I'm going to take some of this yellow and white. Put a little bit more yellow in here. And don't worry about going in your petals. You want it to look like the background to look consistent. So if you need to go in your petals to make it look like it's one solid background and not like you're painting around the petals, feel free to do that. I'm not really sure why there's like this line right there.
See that line? It feels like a weird line. It's weird. Okay, so I'm not sure why it's doing that. Why there's like this line of green that for some reason can't be like covered up. So what I'm gonna do to kind of help that is I'm probably just going to bring out my, it's so weird. I'm gonna bring out this petal to that line to kind of help cover that up. I have no idea what's happening there, like why it's doing that. But that's okay. I've never seen anything like that before. Alright, so this is the gist. I'm going to bring over a little bit of darkness from this side because there's darkness over here, so I'm just going to kind of bring it over a little bit. Alright, so now you can either leave it like that, and I know it looks really kind of like, what are you painting? It might look like, well, I don't know what that background is or what it's doing. But I promise if you just leave it like that and you do the front of it, it will fade into the background. But we are going to do some bokeh. So I'm going to use this size one. It's the middle size that I have. And we're just going to take some of this. I'm going to get it a tiny bit wet. And when I say a tiny bit, I mean like very damp just on the top of it. Don't submerge your thing or else it'll be so wet. Let's see. How does Caesar still can't paint today, but I enjoy watching live? Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you feel better. Thanks for being here. Yeah. I hope that's not like a it happens all the time thing. Okay, I'm going to take some of this color, and it can be kind of really whatever color you want. I'm going to start with the dark first, and how I load this is I get some paint on there, and then I just move it around and I twist it around and try to get it as you know, even as possible. And as you're starting this, it's gonna be like, oh, I'm ruining it, what am I doing? Anywhere where you want like a dark spot, you can put in these, and then you can slowly start working in your lighter colors. And then once you're ready to move to a lighter color, you're gonna have to submerge it to rinse out that dark color. Make sure you try to get out as much moisture as you can in like a paper towel. And then I'm gonna get out some more like yellowish green. You can add I've noticed that a lot of times when I do bokeh, it comes down to how much you use, like how much you actually bokeh. get out a little bit more weight. And if you want to know how to do some bokeh without these, just grab a round brush, and you're just going to take some of whatever color you're trying to do it with, and you're just going to start in a circle and go out. And you're going to start in a circle and move out. And that's kind of how you're going to do it. So it's definitely not as fast, but it's still just as effective. Start in the middle and go out. Start in the middle, go out. You just have to make sure that you don't have a ton of paint on your brush. I'm going to start in the middle, go out. And you're just going to keep adding until you have something that you like. I'm going to put some more light colors right here. The sponges are cheating. It is not cheating. It is a tool. It is a tool we use. My husband says sponges are cheating, but I quite like the sponge effect. It makes it look bokeh so much easier. It does. When texture effect changes via the sponge type. Yes, it does. Yep. The different sponges change the different effects. I don't think it's cheating. That's like when people say that using a traceable is cheating. It's like, well, I could spend 3 hours getting it perfect. Or I could draw it on my iPad and use a traceable and get the same effect. But also the thing is like using tools and stuff like that, it just, I don't know, art is art. Who are you, not necessarily your husband, but in general, who are you to put a limiter or a rule on how someone else should, you know, create or be artistic? I don't know. I've always loved using these for bokeh. They are fun, they're quick, they're great for kids. It's a fun effect. All right, that's pretty much it. I think I'm gonna take a break. It's really easy to get lost in the effect and do too much. I feel like, I mean, can you do too much? Like, let's be real. Honestly, this is one of those effects that's like the more you do, the better it looks, I feel like. Like there's probably a point in which it's like, okay, I should probably stop. But
more often than not, it's like, okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and rinse out my, my sponge. If you wanna go rinse it out, wash it out with soap now, feel free to do that. I'm gonna do that after. Make sure that you wash it out with soap though, because if you don't wash it out properly, all that paint that's inside all those pores will dry, and then it's just not gonna be the same. So you can tell the ones that I have washed either immediately or well versus when I let it sit a little bit longer and I just wasn't able to get out certain parts of it. Like, it still works, but this little edge is just a little bit more coarse, and it changes how the effect goes on. It's a little bit more scratchy. So make sure you take care of your sponges. They will last you a long time. Even though they're cheap sponges, they will last you a long time if you take care of them. I feel like that's like with anything in life. Even if it's cheap, you take care of it, it'll last you a good time. Good while. Okay. Now that we have our background, let's go ahead and clean up our edges. We're gonna do a layer of white, but before we do that, if you have a acrylic marker that you want to use, that's totally fine. I'm just gonna go in with a small brush with my black and go around my ladybug and put in all of the black parts. This will really help later when we come in with that white and cleaning up. If we go over it by accident, it will really help because we will already have that in there. We're not going to lose any of those pieces, because white, if you haven't been painting for very long, different colors have different opacities, and white has like the most opacity. So it's the least translucent. It's very, very, very opaque, so it will cover up like anything that you go over it with. So let's take a few minutes, go over with our black. I already have black out, so I'm just going to grab some of this. And it doesn't need to be super thick, like you can have a little bit of water in it. But this is just going to help me later when I'm trying to figure out where all these legs are, or where all the black dots are. So I'm just going to fill these in, and this will just be helpful later. Alright, and I'm just going to cover up this whole, what would be the bottom part of the snowman. the main part of his head.
Alright, so now that that's done, I am going to take a liner brush and just go around the outside of it just so that I don't lose my outline too. Especially if you've spent hours trying to, you know, get all the proportions down and everything. You don't want to lose that when we're trying to go in here. Alright, so that is that. Let's go ahead and put in our white. So we're gonna do a wash of white, mostly on just the edges, and we're gonna come back. To put our actual coat of white on, like our first coat. Right now we are just adjusting the edges and kind of making it like everything's on the same page essentially. So anywhere where you went over that line, this includes all of these guys. And actually, I'm going to go in here with a little bit of this darker color. Alright, so I ended up not really having to go too much further up just because the bokeh kind of covered up that weird like line that my canvas was doing. I don't even know, my paint was doing. I don't even know why or what was happening there. But the bokeh kind of covered that up. I think filling in these white parts are just so relaxing because it's like, it's not really a science to it. You're just kind of like filling in different areas. It's like coloring in the lines. Okay, I do need to turn this so I have a better better hand on it. It's really awkward going in at that angle. And then, was that it? Or was it just that one? Oh, and I have this one too. All right. So now that that's kind of covered up, I'm gonna do one kind of quick coat for all of these. I had to wait until the green dried for me to go back over this. Right, so now that we have that, we're gonna go ahead and make our kind of white gray color. We're gonna do a slightly grayish color first, and then we can come back over it with pure white anywhere where there's a little bit of highlight. So again, we're starting with our mid-tone, which, yes, it is a white daisy,
But whenever you have something that's white, especially when painting, you have to really look at what color it actually is, because a lot of the times anything that's white is going to reflect its surroundings. So right now it's reflecting either the sky or just the color around it, and that's going to make it not exactly white. So we're going to create a just ever so slightly off-white, like a grayish. Maybe we'll add just like ever so slight hint of brown, maybe. But more often than not, when you're painting white, it's not actually white. It has other colors in it. We actually talked about that in our cat class, because this was a white cat with like brown like in the nose, and it's a white cat, but because it's white, it's reflecting the blue that is surrounding the cat, and so it has like blue up here, it's got blue in here, it has blue all up in the bottom of the face and in the neck. And you wouldn't really like think to put blue in the fur, but because it's reflecting, it's a white cat that's reflecting what's around it, you have these blue accents, and because it's reflecting that, its surroundings. So when we're doing this, we're going to create a color that's kind of the medium tone of that gray. That way we can come back in with our darks and lights and add those highlights. Okay. So I'm going to take just a tiny bit of black. Start small, okay? Start with just a tiny bit of black. You can always put more in. And again, we're not trying to put gray on it. It's just supposed to be not white, you know? Okay, so I think I have a good color here. And it's gonna seem dark at first, but we're gonna be adding other highlights to this. This is the medium tone, remember that. And if it is a little bit too dark, you can add just a little bit of water to it, and that will make it a little bit more like a wash. Or you can add more white to it, it's up to you. And when we're painting these petals, try to always go in the direction that it is, try to go in the direction that it's growing. When I'm gonna go over the petals that have the ladybug on it, I am gonna add just a tiny bit of water so that it's a little bit more translucent. And if you get any paint on your background that you don't want that there, just grab a clean brush, get it wet, dab it off, and go back in and clean up that line. On the edges, I'm trying to have my paint be a little bit more concentrated and less water because I want that thick white paint to be on the edges, because that's where, you know, I'm still trying to cover up with layers. I'm still trying to cover up the background that kind of came in during the background process. Am I painting them all gray? Yeah, for the most part, yes. Just that very, very light gray. This is also helpful because I will know what I've painted and what I haven't, because a lot of times when you're painting white on white canvas, it's really hard to tell what you've painted and what you haven't. And just by having just a slight undertone to it, just a slight color to it, it does help in the painting process of figuring out where the heck you've painted. And honestly, it looks gray, but once I put in this yellow, it's going to look white. Like, you're not even going to notice that it's gray. Like, that's how light this gray is. It's very, very light, but it does make a difference when you're painting it of if it's white or if it's gray. Okay, so there's that. I'm gonna go ahead and put in a first coat of this yellow so we can get that process started. And I'm gonna start with almost like a yellow ochre. But not quite yellow ochre. So I'm gonna mix my medium yellow and my yellow ochre together so I can get kind of like a lighter, because I want to kind of put in these, how we're going to be doing this is we're going to be doing the dark color first, and then we're going to be putting in the light colors, and that's how we're going to get all those little texture pieces. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, just trust the process. I'll walk you through it. Okay, we want like a nice golden color. And this color might need 2 coats, which is why we're starting now. So let's go ahead and put on a fairly thin coat. Whenever we're working with acrylics, unless you're doing like a textured piece, just do thin coats. And when I get to the outside, I am turning my brush so I can start that process of texture in here. And I'm just texturing the outside of it. so my middle is like right here. Alright, so that's a good first coat. I'll probably go a little bit darker for the second one. But until then, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and put in some of my darks first. So with this gray color that we already used, I have a little bit left over, so I'm just going to use that. I'm going to add a tiny bit more black to it. So it's going to make it a little bit darker. I'm not going to mix it with all of it, just some of it, in case I want to blend it together. I'm going to grab my filbert, my small filbert, and I'm going to start choosing which petals are in front of which petal. So for instance, this petal right here is in front of the two petals around it. So I'm just going to go around on either side and put in just a little tiny line, and then you can rinse out your brush and you can just blend out that outer edge of it. And just by the looks of this, I know that I had that warmth. I had a tiny bit of brown in my other, in this color, and when I put on this one, because it was only just that black, it was not as warm, and you could tell it was a very cool gray. So I'm going to add just a touch of brown to this darker color, just to try to warm it up just a little bit. Just with a dry brush, I can come in here and add a little bit of this you can always rinse out your brush, wipe it off, and go in and kind of manipulate what you just did, either by blending it out more You can also add a couple streaks in the middle of your petals. Start adding, coming down from the top if you want. Starting to just add a little bit of texture, and this one, most of this is dry brushing, and dry brushing is when you don't really have very much water, if at all, on your brush. You can kind of just add little tiny bits of paint, like you have barely any paint on your brush. Just adding little bits here and there, little bits at a time. I'm adding just little bits of darkness here on the inside. On like the very bottom of these, kind of coming out. Those are going to be just a tad bit darker because they have more shadows in them. Some lines in there, and again, I'm using a dry brush. I barely have, I probably don't have any water in my brush, and I'm just using a dry brush for this. I find that dry brushing a lot of the time is like, it's almost like coloring. You just have like a little bit of, you just like, the more you go over it, the darker it gets. Make your lines. A lot of daisies have like pretty much 2 lines that kind of go down. But they don't always have to. Alright, I'm going to do another coat of our yellow, but I'm going to make it a tiny bit darker this time. I'm going to add like a tiny bit of black, I think. Maybe a tiny bit of brown because I don't want it to be grayed out. Usually when you add black to yellow, it makes it kind of green, and I don't really want it green. So adding brown adds back in that kind of red color and helps keep it on the warmer side. Just going to add another thin coat. Just with my big brush. Alright, so that's a better, color for that, and I think that looks great. Now I'm going to go in with just pure white and add in just some highlights to my petals. And what's funny is now you could probably look at it and it doesn't look gray. It looks white with some shadows. now that all of the white, the pure white, is actually gone. So I'm going to come in here with just some white, and I'm going to add in these highlights. This is where you really get to shape these petals. Wherever the light is hitting, that's where your pure white is going to come in. So make sure that you don't cover up all your gray. Use your white as an accent to bring attention to certain parts of it, to give it shape. All right, and there you have your daisy. Before we work on our middle part, let's go ahead and put a first coat of our red. I'm going to get rid of this green right here because it's just dry paint and it's kind of just everywhere. So I'm going to make some room on my palette. This is, if you're not sold on flat palettes yet, I wish I would have gotten one a long time ago. And this is like one of my favorite features, is being able to, even in the middle of a class where I've run out of space, I have no more space to add any more colors, I can just clear it off and add my paint. I don't have to take it to another room or get new paint or anything like that. It's very, very helpful. Okay, So, we are gonna find, just as always, we're gonna find a medium tone. We're gonna find a medium tone of this. It's kind of got a little bit more of an edgy. I don't know why I said edgy. Orangey. A little bit more of an orangey tone to it. I must be tired. Why did I say edge? Why was I thinking edge? Maybe the edges of it? I don't know. Regardless, we're gonna make a little bit more of a toned down red. Right now I have a very bright, vibrant red. So I'm gonna take a little bit of this yellow. I'm gonna mix it together. And that's pretty good, but I'm also going to add a little bit of white to it and a little bit of brown to it. The white is going to lighten it up a little bit, and the brown is going to make it a little bit less, not vibrant, but just a bit more earthy. So this is probably still too red, I would say, so I'm going to add a little bit more yellow. And I think this is okay for our first coat. We can always adjust it because sometimes it looks different on the palette than it does on the canvas. So let's go ahead and just put this in. And if you went over your edges with black, make sure that you go over that with your red. And this first coat is mainly just to cover up all of that white in this area. Make sure that you get in all those little pores of the canvas, all that little texture. And then I tend to go over everything, make sure there's no lines from any of the from any brush strokes. I try to make sure that's all smooth because we're going to be going over this a couple times, and if you leave lines of your brush, if there's any excess paint on there, it's going to dry and then it's going to create bumps. Which more paint will then kind of get trapped behind. So try to make sure that it's all it's all smooth, okay? Okay, let's go ahead and I'm going to take a little bit of green and yellow, and I'm going to create mine was all dried anyway, so I'm just trying to recreate a little bit of what this color is. So just a little bit of green and yellow and brown, and I'm going to create a little bit of, there's a little bit of green in here, and I'm going to use that for the shadow area. So just with a dry brush, I'm just going to add a little bit of green down here at the bottom. Doesn't have to be in all the spots. a little bit there. That'll also help kind of shade it a little bit. And you can always come back with the actual gray if you need any further shading. But I think this is fine. Okay. Now we're gonna have a little bit of fun with this middle section. I'm gonna take a little bit of this red that I have and mix it with the yellow. And just with a dry brush, because there's a little bit of red here. And I'm just going to put it in the middle, and then I'm going to blend it out. And you can always rinse off your brush, get a little bit of water, and blend out anything that you don't like. Because now what we're gonna do is we are going to create our little pockets of yellow. Now, you could just stipple, and that's totally fine if you want to stipple. I'm gonna try something. I'm going to get out some yellow, add a little bit of white to it, and we're going to see if we can recreate this kind of inside stamen, just the middle of this. Mix some of this together. So I have this plain yellow that I'm working with, so this and white. I am going to add just a tiny bit of our base color to it. Just so that it's a little bit more in that color. Alright, so I'm going to take a, let's do a round brush. I'm going to do like a medium to small round brush. Maybe I'll go a little bit bigger. I'll use my other brush. It'll depend on whatever size canvas you have. If you have a bigger canvas, use a bigger brush. If you have a smaller canvas, use a smaller brush. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm just going to place it down. And try not to cover up all of that base. You can even blend it out a little bit. So I'm putting down like 3 or 4 or 5, and then I'm blending down the bottom just with my finger, so that when I come back over it again, you'll be able to see the tips again. So just do a couple at a time. And this is going to take a process. You're going to have to be patient with it. And for me, I'm kind of trying to go in between them all. And what I mean is, like, when there's two, I'm trying to put one in between those two. So they kind of like overlap a little bit. I'm gonna go to the middle, because the middle one, there's like one in the middle, and then there's like ones that kind of like go into it. So I kind of just like made a flower. Am I getting paint on myself? Yes. Do I care? No, not really. Alright, so what I've found to be helpful during this process is to have your brush pretty much dead on and not slanted, because then you can put your brush down and there's like a natural blending that happens. And I don't have to blend it with my finger. And is it perfect? No. Is it fun? Yes. Was it effective? Yes, it was. So I'm going to come back in here, make these ones a little bit brighter. Alright, and that's pretty much it for the inside of the flower. You could do as much detail as you want. You can take your time on that if you want, but this is a really easy way to create that sort of look without a ton of work. Your eye does a lot of the filling in when it comes to that sort of thing. You have enough detail that your eye fills in all the gaps. Okay. Let's go ahead and fix our red color. So for me, I think it was still a little bit too red, so I'm actually gonna add some orange to this. I'm gonna keep a little bit off to the side because I think it is a good dark color, but I'm gonna add more yellow, add a little bit more of that orange. If you wanted to keep it more of a red, that's fine. There's a lot of ladybugs that are like super bright red, but this one is a little bit more on the orangey side. So I'm going to do a second coat of this orange, kind of orangey red. Okay. And while it's still wet, I'm gonna grab some white and yellow, kind of mix it with what's on my brush, and I'm going to add just a little bit where these light spots are. It's not so much on the left side, but there's a lot on the right side. And I got a little bit in there, but I'm gonna do even more. My yellow and white. Alright, so now I know approximately where it all is. I'm gonna wait for it to dry, and then we can come in with some more detail. Until then, I'm going to go ahead and cover in, with the exception of the dots, I'm going to go ahead and put in all that black again. Again, it's just like coloring in the lines. It's so relaxing. So I apologize if I'm not like talking through everything. Alright, I'm going to switch to a liner brush so I can be a little bit more particular with the legs. And essentially his legs kind of go like in and out of thickness.
see, these guys come out of a little crease. All right. I'm going to put the little dots on the white part. I'm just making minor adjustments here and there. Different shapes of them all. I think this guy isn't as big. All right, now I can come in with a lighter version of this orange. I'm going to mix some of this orange with yellow and some white. And just with a dry brush, go around. With the same type of effect, I'm going to go in with this red that I kept off. This little bit of a darker version of it. And I'm going to use that as kind of my dark version, like down here and kind of in the middle right here. Probably pretty good. Just gonna put a little bit of a darker section in the middle here. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the red. Now all that's left to do is fill in the black dots, which will really bring this to life. And I'm gonna do this big one right here first because I still have to put in the white dots too. in the small one over here. Alright. That is pretty much the end of the black. Now we just got to put in our white parts, our white sections. And for that, I need more white. Grab my white. And there's white under here. There's almost like little triangles. And I will probably have to do 2 coats of this white, only because it is going over fairly dark spots. And there's a little line on top of this one right here. It's kind of hard to see. Little reflections here and there. Alright. That's pretty much it. If you want to add any like brown elements to the like the different sections of the ladybug, I know that they do have the little bit of brown to their all their legs and stuff like that, but at this point it's like totally up to you. But yeah, that is pretty much it. I love how it came out. Look how cute. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me. This is pretty much the end of our class, and we are right on time for our, it is 5 o'clock. Great timing. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Oh, there was one other thing. If you wanted to add, because these guys are very shiny, if you wanted to add some sort of a highlight on the left side, like it's highlighting the, it's reflecting the, what am I trying to say? The flower. There we go. It's reflecting the flower. But yeah, that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for joining me. Next week we are doing our, I think they're like winter trees or something like that. It's got a mountain, it's got trees, it's snow, it's very pretty. And I'm excited to paint it. So if you painted this with me or you're going to paint it, please go onto Facebook, and if you're not in my Facebook group, please join that group. I would love to have you in there. It's a free Facebook community where we get to share our classes, any class that you take from mine.
that you take of mine, you can go and share it in a album. You can go put it in an album for other people to get inspired by, and see everybody else's. I know that that's like, honestly, that's one of my favorite things, is being able to see everybody else's paintings that I also got to do. So yeah, feel free to go add yours. I would love to see it. And we will see you next week. If you liked this content, please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. But yeah, we'll go ahead and sign off. We'll see you next week. And yeah, have a great rest of your night or morning, whenever you're painting. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye guys.